Bella, Teacup Yorkie. Bella, Chapter 1, Stinker Callie and the Shadow of Doubt. Sherry's hands danced with seashells, tiny reminders of a world far different from the dusty Arizona desert. Each click and rustle whispered of oceans unseen, while Bella, her Yorkie princess, padded impatiently nearby. Today, a shadow box was Sherry's canvas, an escape from the midday heat. Her mind wandered, as did Bella's, drawn to the faint sound of claws on tile. Callie, Sherry murmured under her breath, more a statement than a question. The cat, svelte and silent, was Bella's arch-nemesis. Their confrontations were miniature operas, full of snarls, feints, and Sherry's frantic pleas for calm. Bella, bless her valiant heart, always thought herself thrice the size of Callie. Out in the yard, Bella's keen ear twitched. She abandoned Sherry's side in a flash of tan fur. Through the open door, Sherry spotted Stinker, the perpetually lounging hairless wonder, sunning herself like a tiny, wrinkled sphinx. Unlike Bella, with her terrier fire, Stinker possessed the soul of a particularly mellow dormouse. She raised one wrinkled eyelid at Bella's approach, sighing dramatically as if such youthful zeal was beneath her. Bella's tiny world revolved around sniffing out Callie. Today, a ripple of uncertainty washed over her. Something, not quite a scent, more a shiver in the air told her danger was just out of sight. Dave's footsteps pounded out a rhythm in the upstairs studio. Lines of code flickered across the screen as he coaxed his latest 3D printing project to life. His focus was absolute, the buzz of Bella's tiny world far below a dull background hum. Back downstairs, the hunt was on. Bella sniffed furiously, yipping in frustration. Stinker, sensing adventure, reluctantly roused herself, ambling over with the grace of a particularly awkward seal. They were yin and yang, Bella, all feisty energy, and Stinker, a languid counterpoint. Sherry held her breath. If Bella found Callie, chaos would break loose. Her craft project lay forgotten, replaced by a rising tension. This silent duel might erupt at any moment. A scuffle from behind the couch made her pulse jump. Bella whimpered, not in fear, but frustration. Then silence, thicker than before. It hung in the air like a held breath. Sherry edged towards the couch, Stinker following with surprising vigor. Had Bella finally cornered Callie? Or was there something else out there, unseen and unheard? As she rounded the corner, what Sherry saw froze her heart. Bella, nose to nose with nothing. Stinker whined softly, nudging her beloved Yorkie friend back. It wasn't Callie, or a stray, or a lizard, there was just empty space. Yet, Bella trembled, as if sensing a threat more terrifying because it couldn't be seen. Bella, sweetie, Sherry's voice wavered. Was Bella sensing something wrong? An animal instinct beyond human understanding? Or was it something simpler, a tiny dog imagination running wild? The uncertainty was unbearable. She crouched, holding out a hand to Bella. It was the smallest comfort she could offer in the face of this strange, unseen fear. Bella Chapter 2, Whispers in the Shadows. The invisible encounter lingered in Sherry's mind, a nagging itch she couldn't scratch. Bella remained watchful, the usual feisty gleam in her eyes dulled by a newfound wariness. For days, she clung closer to Stinker as if the usually lazy hairless hound were her sole anchor in this suddenly treacherous world. A storm rattled the desert. Outside, wind whipped sand against the windows like a swarm of furious insects, but the true tempest raged within the house. Callie, sensing the shift in Bella, grew bold. The once timid cat darted across open spaces with renewed arrogance, testing boundaries. Her tail, sleek and black, was a flag of defiance waved before Bella's twitching nose. One sweltering afternoon, under a sky the color of bruised peaches, Bella's tension snapped. It started with a low growl, the kind reserved for especially audacious squirrels. Her gaze fixated on a patch of seemingly empty hallway. Sherry followed the line of sight and saw nothing. No Callie, just shadows playing tricks under the harsh fluorescent light. Bella erupted. A frenzy of barking shattered the fragile peace. Sherry scrambled to her feet, torn between soothing the agitated Yorkie and the growing fear that something beyond mere cat and dog rivalry was at play. Stinker, usually impervious to canine drama, startled awake. Her wrinkled brow furrowed, not in annoyance, but in what looked strangely like concern. It was a rare act of solidarity, the two furred housemates united against an unseen adversary. Dave, oblivious in his upstairs domain, missed the mounting tension. The rhythmic whirring of the 3D printer drowned out the echoes of Bella's frantic symphony. Meanwhile, a flicker of movement behind a potted plant drew Sherry's eye. An impossible angle, a flash of fire. This time it wasn't nothing. Callie, perched precariously on the planter, hissed venomously at the sight of Bella. In the blink of an eye, the usual dance began, Bella lunging, Callie disappearing in a swirl of black fur. The crash of pottery met Sherry's panicked cries. When the dust settled, Bella whined, a defeated sound mixed with an undercurrent of persistent vigilance. The victory, such as it was, belonged to Callie. But this time, a bead of sweat trickled down Sherry's spine as she soothed the trembling Yorkie. There was a pattern, a sense of escalation. Something lurking beneath the surface of normal pet squabbles. That night, the desert called into a deceptive peace. Outside, under an impossibly wide expanse of stars, coyotes yipped at an indifferent moon. Inside, sleep eluded Sherry. With each rustle of wind, each creak of the old house, her imagination conjured terrors. Bella snored at her feet, tiny snores offering faint comfort against the vast uncertainty of the night. Even Stinker's gentle, almost wheezy snores took on a strangely reassuring quality. As dawn tinged the horizon, Sherry made a silent vow. The unseen whispers that seemed to haunt Bella, the strange tension twisting her tiny world. It was time to stop merely observing, time to investigate. What danced in the shadows, teasing and tormenting her little Yorkie? The answers, however unsettling, couldn't remain hidden forever. Bella Chapter 3, Underneath the Surface. A low hum threaded through the house, emanating from Dave's studio. It became a counterpoint to Bella's anxious panting, a juxtaposition of technological efficiency and animal intuition. Dave was building, oblivious to the escalating battle of wolves played out below his carefully ordered world. For Sherry, the search for answers began with subtle changes. She lowered the volume on the television, listened to the creaks and groans of the house with the precision of a seasoned detective. Every movement, every shadow, seemed rife with hidden meaning. Was she reading too much into Bella's behavior, fueling her own fear? Or was there truly something out of the ordinary at work? Underneath her resolve, an old flicker of superstition threatened to take root. She found herself placing small salt sachets near dorsals, a remnant of childhood lore whispered by her grandmother. Logic warred with instinct, ridiculous versus unsettling. Yet, even as she brushed off the salt superstition, her fingers lingered on an old worn rosary, another heirloom steeped more in sentiment than true faith. While Sherry navigated the tightrope of unease, life resumed a semblance of normalcy. Under the unrelenting Arizona sun, Bella rediscovered the joys of barking at lizards and birds, finding momentary respite from her indoor terrors. Stinker followed suit, a comical sidekick basking in reflected glory. Yet, evenings echoed with Bella's sharp bursts of barking at seemingly empty corners, leaving Sherry both on edge and deeply concerned. One evening, Dave, lured from his coding sanctuary by the promise of iced tea, witnessed the spectacle firsthand. It was an eerily still night. Stinker lay in a sphinx-like repose on the patio, Bella curled protectively at her wrinkly feet. Out of nowhere, Bella shot upright, hackles raised. Not a playful stance, but one vibrating with pure rage directed at nothing. "Something spook her?" Dave inquired, skepticism edging his voice. Sherry described the pattern, the escalation, her fears dismissed by vets and friends alike. It was, they'd insisted, nothing more than territorial dog nonsense. But her mother's heart knew something was deeply wrong. Dave remained a grounding force of practical skepticism, offering reassuring explanations based on drafts, unseen insects, or distant noises only amplified by Bella's hyper-awareness. "We should get a camera," he suggested finally, practicality winning out. "Catch her in the act, figure out what sets her off." "You mean prove nothing's there?" Sherry countered, frustration battling a flicker of hope. The solution seemed both woefully inadequate and the start of something, a tangible measure against the gnawing unease. That night, tucked into bed with Bella burrowed close, Sherry whispered a prayer. Not the practiced recitations of childhood, but a desperate plea for clarity, for protection, for her tiny dog's peace of mind. The desert silence thrummed with potential answers, but for now, only the unknown kept vigil. Bella Chapter 4, Eyes in the Dark. The camera arrived with the impersonal efficiency of online shopping. Dave set it up with a techie's flourish, angling it to capture the living room, Bella's favorite haunting ground. In grainy black and white, the once familiar space transformed into a stage set for unseen dramas. Every twitch of a curtain, every shift of light, felt loaded with significance. Waiting became the family pastime. Days blended into one another, measured by Bella's bursts of vigilance. It was as if she felt the gaze of the camera, sensing a new dimension to her silent battle. At Sherry's insistence, Callie was confined upstairs, a truce enforced through gritted teeth and a lingering resentment from the cat. Bella, with the main source of her ire removed, remained paradoxically tense. Sherry scrolled through hours of footage. Bella curled at her feet, Stinker snoozing beside them with indifference. Normal life flickered across the screen in fast-forward, dust motes dancing in shafts of sunlight, the dog duo napping, Dave raiding the fridge with a distracted air. Then, the pattern appeared as subtly as it always did. Bella stiffened, ears alert. Her head whipped back and forth as if tracking invisible prey. It was a performance they knew all too well. Sherry gripped the armrest, heart pounding in unison with the frantic clicking of Bella's nails on the tile. "There!" Dave whispered, pointing at the screen. For a split second, a shape flickered, a distortion near the arm of the sofa, like heat haze on an asphalt road. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, leaving only the lingering afterimage of something. Not an animal, not an insect. They rewound, played the snippet again and again, eyes straining. The form appeared fleetingly, shifting with an almost liquid quality. "Are we losing our minds?" Sherry breathed, a question hanging heavy in the space between them. Dave remained the voice of reason, suggesting glitches, camera defects, tricks of the light. His rational explanations were a flimsy shield against the unsettling twist in her gut. It felt otherworldly, a presence out of sync with the mundane reality of their living room. Nights morphed into sleepless vigils. The camera became their silent observer, an inadequate guardian against the encroaching strangeness. While Dave dismissed Bella's distress as canine quirkiness amplified by tension, Sherry couldn't shake the sense of impending disaster. Something felt deeply wrong, as if the fabric of their home was slowly unraveling thread by thread. One sleepless morning, Sherry, bleary-eyed and gripped by inexplicable terror, scrolled back through old family photos. She stopped cold. An old snapshot taken shortly after they moved in. In the background, blurred by movement, was a shape. The same shimmery, near-liquid form they'd glimpsed on the camera. Had it been here all along? A lingering presence, dormant until woken by Bella's arrival. A new reality took root, twisting its way around Sherry's heart. She couldn't escape the feeling that they were no longer alone. This wasn't a question of Callie, lizards, or drafts. The invisible whispers she'd sensed from the beginning, they were getting louder. And in those whispers, she heard her brave little Yorkie barking defiance against a shadow she couldn't yet comprehend. Bella Chapter 5, Echoes from the Past. Panic, fueled by too much coffee and not enough sleep, crackled through Sherry's veins. Every flicker of the hallway light, every soft thud from upstairs, fed her mounting fear. Armed with the faded old photograph, she confronted Dave. No longer tentative concern, her voice vibrated with desperate certainty. "This is real," she insisted, thrusting the photograph into his hands. "Look." Dave stared, brow furrowed in the early morning light. "Honey, this is blurry. Could be anything." His calm pragmatism only fanned the flames of Sherry's anxiety. In his hesitation, she saw shades of doubt. But could something so outlandish, so fantastical, truly be happening? She desperately needed confirmation, validation that her sanity wasn't as fragile as it felt. On shaky legs, Sherry took to the internet, the modern-day oracle for answers both genuine and absurd. Hours blurred as she navigated the murky waters of paranormal forums, seeking any explanation for the shimmering distortion. Ghost sightings, poltergeist activity, interdimensional anomalies. The online world exploded with theories, none concrete enough to appease the growing dread in her heart. Meanwhile, life twisted itself around the anomaly. Bella's vigilance never wavered, fueled by an instinct Sherry couldn't entirely explain away. It felt like a standoff, Bella as their tiny, fierce sentinel against the unseen. At night, she huddled even closer to Sherry, the trembling of her small body a constant pulse of unease. They became nocturnal allies, stinker an indifferent third party. Dave remained a stubborn outlier. While admitting the photograph was strange, he retreated into research mode. Temperature fluctuations, electromagnetic disturbances, anything that offered a reasonable explanation. Sherry clung to his rationality, even as it faltered slightly under the strain of their strange new reality. In desperation, Sherry reached out to an elderly family friend, Aunt Louisa, the one who indulged in tales of spirits and omens. Whispered over shaky cell phone reception, her story was met with a silence heavier than skepticism. It was the confirmation she hadn't dared truly hope for, laced with a hint of caution. "There are old places in the desert," Aunt Louisa's voice crackled through the phone. "Older than your house, older than us. These things sometimes cling to those places." She spoke of smudging, a bundle of dried sage to cleanse the space. It felt like grasping at straws, a relic of superstition against the cold unknown. Still, clutching the phone, Sherry found a sliver of resolve seeping back. Even if it was just a ritual, it was a gesture of defiance against the shadows encroaching on their lives. With hesitant steps, Sherry tracked down Sage from a shop smelling of dust and lavender. That night, windows thrown open to the desert night, the smoke curled against the ceiling. Holding back coughs, Sherry and Dave moved from room to room, Bella watching curiously. At least it was an action, a tangible pushback against the fear. The smoke lingered long after the sage bundle was reduced to ash. Yet, there remained a different kind of stillness. Even Dave seemed to exhale a breath he hadn't been aware of holding. Later, curled up with the sleeping dogs, Sherry found herself drifting into a restless sleep. An unusual sense of calm seeped in. Had they banished the presence? Or was it a temporary respite, a flicker of normalcy before the unseen entity gathered its strength? Bella Chapter 6, Wings in the Moonlight. With the faint scent of sage still clinging to the air, the house settled into an unusual lull. Dave drifted back into his tech world, reassured by the lack of canine drama. Sherry went through the motions of her days, normalcy painted in thin, unconvincing layers over gnawing unease. For Bella, it was only a ceasefire. Stinker basked in the returning sunlight, unconcerned. Yet, every evening as the twilight deepened, Bella's old vigilance returned. Those big Yorkie eyes peered into shadows, filled with a defiant fear that Sherry knew only too well. But it wasn't the house that terrified Bella anymore. It was the outside world. One evening, while taking her usual frantic lap around the backyard, a flash of motion stopped her short. A massive pair of golden eyes glowed from atop the back wall. For a terrifying heartbeat, beast and bird locked gazes. It was an owl, huge and horned, staring down with ancient disdain. Bella had never seen its like, not the smaller owls that occasionally fluttered through the Palo Verde trees. This creature was the stuff of nightmares. Her bark pierced the twilight, not a furious terrier outburst, but a shrill yip of pure terror. She tore back towards the house, scrambling frantically as the owl, with a silent whoosh of wings, took to the night sky. Sherry froze on the back patio, watching as Bella flung herself against the door, whining in pure animal panic. When Sherry finally scooped her up, the tiny body was a trembling mass of nerves. Even Stinker looked momentarily disturbed, sniffing with faint curiosity. From that night on, a new terror joined Bella's list. Dusk became a battleground. Trips outside were met with frantic scanning of the darkening sky, whimpers replacing defiant barks. The owl seemed to know, sensing an easy target in the small shaking dog. It took to perching on the wall, silent and ominous, just as the desert settled into inky blue night. The house filled with an eerie silence after these episodes. Bella clung to Sherry, seeking the only safety she knew. For the first time since it all began, Sherry started locking the bedroom door at night, half for Bella's comfort, half for a sense of protection against the looming vastness of the desert just outside. Then came the moonlit night when it all reached a breaking point. Sherry had hesitated, dreading the evening showdown with the owl. Bella trembled even on a short leash, tugging back frantically. Out of the corner of her eye, Sherry saw it, a blur of feathered death descending from the wall. In a frantic rush, Sherry yanked Bella back just as talons brushed the ground. The owl hooted, an indignant shriek as it circled back with terrifying efficiency. A heartbeat before another dive, Dave burst out the back door, shouting and swinging a broom in a useless but strangely brave gesture. Stinker, jolted from her endless slumber, even gave chase, waddling and snuffling after the retreating owl with a speed never seen before. By some miracle, Bella remained unscathed, but the trauma painted itself across her tiny face. That night, curled in bed with both dogs trembling under the covers, Sherry made a decision. This war couldn't continue. There were wildlife experts, animal rescues, someone or something out there to end this. The battleground shifted yet again, this time into the realm of phone calls, websites, and a renewed flicker of hope that there might be an earthbound solution to their strange torment. Exhaustion gave way to determined energy. When daylight returned, so did a tiny ray of sunshine. A referral led Sherry to the dusty outskirts of Temp, a sanctuary dedicated to wild birds. Their focus was rehabilitation, but sometimes, they heard stories like Sherry's. The voice on the line was calm, full of the kind of authority that comes from handling claws and beaks on a daily basis. Sounds like a great horned relocated. They can be fierce when defending a spot. Can't make her leave entirely, but we can give you tips to discourage her. That faint promise was enough. For Bella, perhaps more changes were coming, a temporary respite, a return to the simple joys of sunbathing and bird chasing. And for Sherry, there was finally the sense that they weren't alone, that this invisible adversary might just have a tangible form after all. Bella Chapter 7, Bravery in Miniature. The wildlife sanctuary bustled. Not with fluffy creatures, but with hooked beaks and piercing gazes. Sherry navigated a maze of cages housing majestic falcons, a stoic bald eagle, and even fellow owls, none as intimidating as their nocturnal tormentor. Armed with expert advice and a strange mixture of apprehension and newfound bravery, she returned home. Reflective tape now crisscrossed the backyard wall, flashing erratically under the harsh desert sun. Wind chimes clattered in the unrelenting breeze, creating a chaotic symphony meant to disorient the owl. Bella observed with her head cocked, suspicion battling a desperate desire for things to go back to normal. And then, normalcy went out the window. It wasn't an owl this time, but something far more insidious. Sherry spotted it first, a flash of segmented darkness emerging from under the patio table. A scorpion, venomous and defiant, scuttled across the hot concrete. Stinker, lumbering out in her wake, wrinkled her nose and pawed at it with bewildered curiosity. Bella let out a growl that rattled the windows. In a blur of fur, she shot past Stinker, launching herself between the scorpion and the house. With her tiny body puffed up to twice its size, she barked furiously, a symphony of courage and adrenaline. Sherry lunged, scooping Bella back just as the scorpion lunged forward, stinger raised. In the chaos, Callie appeared, drawn by the commotion. This was her turf too, and strange creatures on it triggered primeval hunting instincts. With a hiss that cut through the air, she swatted at the scorpion, driving it back under cover. Dave ran out then, alerted by the frantic noise. Stinker was barking now, an indignant wheezing huff aimed at the unseen threat. Working together, Sherry and Dave managed to trap the scorpion under an upturned bucket and relocate it to a less inhabited stretch of desert. But the adrenaline crash hit hard. They huddled inside, all their old fears amplified by this new vulnerability. What else lurked unseen in the backyard? Beneath the rocks, between the cactus thorns, 100 desert perils whispered their dangers. That evening, a different kind of surveillance began. Callie perched regally on her favorite windowsill, eyes glowing green in the fading light. Stinker waddled from room to room, sniffing around suspiciously. And Bella, the tiny heroine, stood at the kitchen window, tail high and barking fiercely at every stray noise. In the darkness, something moved outside. Not a scorpion, not an owl. A dark, slinking mass in the corner of Sherry's vision. Then, an eerie glow of eyes in the shadows. Callie hissed, fur standing on end. Stinker snarled, an unexpectedly intimidating rumble issuing from her hairless throat. Bella let out a series of high-pitched, ear-splitting yaps. Whatever lingered in the darkness vanished under the triple assault. Sherry leaned against the counter, exhausted and strangely elated. Their miniature army had held the line. They were stronger than they knew, humans, cats, and canines alike. The unseen horrors of the desert, of the shadows, might never fully disappear. But neither would their determination to fight back, to protect their strange little family. The night was full of terrors still, but for now, at least, bravery held them at bay. Bella, Chapter 8, A New Kind of Sunshine. The air pulsed with an unfamiliar symphony of sounds. Voices chattered over tinny, echoing music, beeps mingled with a low rumble of wheels over polished floors, and laughter rang out lighter than birdsong. All of it was woven together with a scent of disinfectant and something comforting, indefinable. This was the Oasis nursing home, and for Bella, the brave Yorkie, it was a whole new world. Sherry sat patiently in a wheelchair, a thin blanket drawn over her lap. The hospital gown felt strangely impersonal after the familiarity of home. Yet, despite the new setting, something was different. Her eyes sparkled with an energy that had dimmed during those long, difficult weeks. Bella knew this energy. It was the same bright warmth that came over her human during backyard zoomies and late-night snuggles. Today, with a wagging tail that threatened to send her flying, Bella basked in this returning brightness. She danced around Sherry's chair, earning happy gasps and pats with surprising gentleness. Dave stood awkwardly nearby, carrying a large baking dish and his quiet concern. Even amidst the strange bustle, he smelled vaguely of tomatoes and basil, lasagna night's familiar comfort infiltrating this sterile environment. "You really did it this time," Sherry teased, nudging him gently. "This smells amazing." He smiled sheepishly, the tension that had held him tight finally easing. "Hope they let us sneak it down for an actual picnic outside." As if conjured by Dave's hopeful words, a nurse appeared, pushing a wheelchair labeled S. Morgan. The woman in it had a cloud of white hair and smile lines that deepened as she took in the scene of canine chaos and homemade dinners. "Well, it looks like Ms. Bella has come to supervise today. And how are we feeling, Sherry?" Sherry radiated warmth in response. "Stronger, thanks to all of you and a certain lasagna chef. Can we take this party outside?" The next hour blurred in a swirl of golden sunshine and soft grass. Bella basked as Sherry wheeled herself with newfound determination down the pathways of the nursing home garden. Dave sat under a flowering tree, savoring his masterpiece. They paused by beds of wildflowers, their vibrant splashes of color reflecting Sherry's returning vibrancy. Residents waved, nurses smiled. Each small interaction felt like a triumph. Even the smell of Sherry's vape, usually banished to the far end of the yard, held a different meaning today. It was the sharp tinge of independence returning. Bella became the unofficial greeter. Tiny and fearless, she flitted from smiling face to surprised wheelchair, earning joyful laughter and gentle pats. Each hand that reached to stroke her was a hand not holding onto loneliness or uncertainty. She was a furry ambassador of pure, boundless joy, and boy did she love her job. Stinker, as she often did, remained entirely indifferent to the fuss. In a patch of warm dust, she sunbathed, oblivious to the admiring human glances. She basked in the simple rhythm of life, nap, snack, nap, untouched by worry or pain. In her obliviousness, she too offered a kind of quiet comfort. By the time evening bathed the courtyard in rose-colored light, even Dave was visibly relaxed. In that gentle light, fears subsided. Their world had shifted, not in the cataclysmic ways of Bella's unseen terrors, but in the small stubborn miracles of healing and human resilience. As the staff wheeled Sherry back indoors, Bella trotted with the air of a conquering hero. For today, with a belly full of lasagna crumbs and a heart full of newfound joy, the shadows held less power. Today, even a small Yorkie could make a vast difference.